Welcome back. Episode 31 of the Cutoffs and Coffee podcast. Your hosts here, James and CT. As always, we got our cutoffs on. We got our coffee next to us. We have a great conversation with you on episode 31 with coach and athlete Duncan Hewitt. Duncan was a former Butler Bulldog. Shout out to Indianapolis, 317, around the area where I'm from. He now is currently a professional baseball player, and also in his off seasons when he's training, he also does some skill work in Westfield, Indiana at Pro X Athlete. We take a deep dive into everything baseball. We talk about not only the physical, but a lot about the mental side of the sport and how beneficial it is to really figure that side out to be able to help yourself perform on the field. We reminisce about some times where Duncan and I used to train together. It at this point was 6, 7, 8 years ago. But the big takeaway that he and I both had from training together was the culture and how important it is to have friends and family and people you love who you train with. And this is a great conversation, not only for baseball players, but parents, athletes alike, and also for big Marvel Universe nerds like Duncan is.
And this episode is going to be brought to you by Underdog Fitness Bands. We are back in stock, and this time we have a new mini red band. It's a little thinner, a little less resistance, all right? But we also have the green band, the black band, and that little red band.
And if you like what we're doing here on the Cutoffs and Coffee podcast, show us some love. Subscribe to us on YouTube, our YouTube channel. Follow us on Spotify and Apple. Give us 5 stars. Leave a comments. Follow our individual social medias and let us know who you want to hear on the podcast. We also like to tease out some of the athletes and the high performers who we're going to have on the show, so it gives you, the listener, an opportunity to ask them questions. But after you do that, go ahead and hit pause. Follow us on all of those things. And then go ahead and hit play and get into this awesome conversation. Episode 31 of the podcast with Duncan Hewitt. Enjoy.
Yeah, that's one of the craziest things is I have literally seen guys throughout, my last 5-6 years, college and pro ball. There are guys that I know do not touch a weight room. They could drink 4 nights a week. They don't eat. They don't hydrate. All the things we studied, went to school for, and tell people every single day when we walk into our gym. And they don't do it, and they're fine. They'll throw 90. They'll throw 95.
Fine.
They'll hit 300, and they'll say, "Oh, my body hurts," and that's about it. They're a little sore. And then I know guys that are the exact opposite, and it's like, dude, if I have a sip of alcohol a month before a start, I will not be okay. And they don't miss a beat in the weight room. They wouldn't miss a rep. They wouldn't take so much as a second off of a time stretch. And that's how they are. But I think in baseball, more than most sports, it's just a different beast, because whatever works best for you, you have to run with it, because it all comes down to the mental side of it. And when people feel their best is apparently sometimes it's hungover, and sometimes it's like the exact opposite of that. Like I just said, like it's so mind-blowing, because I never thought it was like that, like at all. You know what I mean? Like I think you get this picture painted for you, like college to professional sports, that like everybody is this perfect athlete that does everything right 24/7. And it's not even close to that. And a lot of guys that try to be that way, they get burnt out really fast, and it doesn't go great for them. And I learned that in college right away, when I was like, wow, like this kid Tyler Houston, who one of my best friends still now today, but like, dude, he led the Big East in every offensive category. And I don't even know how much he really liked baseball. Like he's just like, yeah, I'm here. Like I love being around the guys. I love doing all this and the camaraderie and all that, but he didn't like have a dying will to go play professional baseball. It's insane.
Glad I started recording.
And that's the intro.
And that's the
Bro,
intro.
that's the intro. Duncan, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, bro. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, we just to give some people some background, we met through Coach Tyler Miller, who was on the podcast. So if you haven't listened to that episode yet, go back and listen to the Cutoffs and Coffee episode with Tyler Miller. So that's where we met, and we were just kind of off air talking about just the days of just like throwing down. And there were pro baseball players, there were basketball players, NFL players, there were arena football players, there were Olympic weightlifters. There were just strength athletes, everybody in the gym at the same time, getting after it, building just an incredible, not only camaraderie with the athletes, but an incredible culture at the gym. And that's what we spent a lot of time with Coach Tyler Miller talking about. And that's something that we'll eventually end up getting to here. But Duncan and I have been friends for a long time, had some really good conversations over social media, and decided to kind of take those conversations and put it in podcast form. And as you can tell from listening to the first 3 minutes of the podcast, we're already into it. So we wanted to say hello. We wanted to welcome him to the show. And we want to, of course, check off the questions that we like to ask to open up. But now that you've already gotten a little feel about where this conversation is going to go, we'll ask these questions and we'll kind of come back to talking about, sports and the weight room and the culture. But Duncan, now that you're here, man, quick Google search, right? We can find out a little bit about you, but what's something that we need to know about you that we can't find by a Google search?
Well, it's on the shirt. All right. It's on the shirt. That's why I didn't have a cutoff, because I figured if I'm not going to wear a cutoff, I gotta represent, and it's gonna be 100% me, right? And that's Spider-Man. It's just I am the Spider-Man fanatic. I'm the Marvel fanatic. Then we got Thor's hammer tattooed on me right here, Mjolnir, Spider-Man on the tricep. The whole arm is planned out for more Marvel comic book stuff. It's all kind of getting done. You know what I mean? But yeah, like literally ever since 2000, the first Spider-Man, I was 2-3 years old, bro, and like I was a fanatic then, and I never grew out of it. I've never gone through this stage of like I'm too old for this, or like I just don't feel the same way about it, which is crazy because every new movie that comes out, I seem to become more immensely like in love with these characters, the story, all that stuff. The comic books, everything, like what Marvel's doing is just so fun for a comic book reader. And I mean, spoiler alert to anybody that has not seen Spider-Man No Way Home, I'm just going to throw it out there right now. It was the greatest and most perfect movie of all time. And for a super fan like myself, I cannot put into words like what it meant to me, like for what that movie accomplished. And everyone who's seen the movie knows exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not going to ruin it for someone that has not seen it, but literally like the most perfect thing in the world. So there you go. There you have it. I play video games in a little Marvel desk, like just literally stickered out, posters everywhere, all my background screensavers, everything's Marvel, tattoos Marvel. I love Marvel.
Dude, I love that. I do have a follow-up question from that. And I haven't seen the movie. And bro, like the last week we've been talking about, like solidifying a time to have you on. I kept thinking like, man, I got to find a time to watch this movie, because I know it'd be we'd have an awesome conversation about it. But a couple months ago, maybe last year sometime, we had Jake Tura on, and the thing that we needed to know about him, but he was a big Batman fan. Okay. Right. So then my immediate question is, who's your Batman? Right. Which one of the Batmans was your favorite? So are you able to decide which favorite Spider-Man you have, or is it just kind of the Spider-Man at the time?
It's honestly, it's Tom Holland, like through and through for me. I actually I've really thought this out, like strangely, because honestly, another podcast that I like to listen to, thedirect.com, it's a guy from New Pal started it, and I had no idea until I started listening to him. But they did every Spider-Man movie in review leading up to Spider-Man No Way Home, which led to me really considering who is my favorite Spider-Man. And Tom Holland is probably the best young actor in Hollywood. Like the way he brings out emotion, and he really makes you care about a dude that is running around New York shooting webs at people. Like at the end of the day, it's silly, right? But he makes you really care about it. and just, the quips, the way he moves. He does a lot of his own stunts, which I can respect. I think that stuff's awesome. And, that's not to say that Toby and Andrew Garfield don't have awesome stuff about them, but Tom Holland masters both Peter Parker and believing that he's the one in the suit. So he takes it for me. Andrew Garfield's probably a close second as far as actors go, but Toby has the nostalgia,
Dude, what an impressive skill set that guy has. And he's done a ton of different films that I've now kind of gone back and watched some of his other stuff. And James, this will make sense for the next question. He's like, bro, where's CT going with this? But it takes so much talent, right, to be able to not only optimize yourself physically to be able to do some of the stuff he's doing, but then also have to act, which is something I've gotten into in the last couple of years. And it's way harder than people think, right? Just like athletes, you see a good athlete and you're like, oh, that's easy, I could do that. And then you go out there, right, and you catch a bullpen for, an MLB starter, right? Yeah. And then you realize how hard the position to play the catcher is, right? Same thing like good actors, right? You don't realize how good they are at acting because they make it seem so natural, right? And, I wanted to transition to this because, again, like learning skills is so important. And I think it's so important that we continue to do it as we get older. And especially, athletes, like lifetime athletes like us, we're always trying to look to better ourselves and optimize ourselves. Can you remember the last skill that you learned or the last thing that you taught yourself or something that you're working on currently?
Yeah. Well, so juggling has definitely been a big one. As of late, I spent a lot of time on my off days trying to learn how to juggle in the bullpen. I got it down pretty well. But on top of that, a kind of a new one that I'm working on, and I actually work on this with some of my young catchers that I give lessons to, is we juggle together, but it's like a transfer drill for throwing down to second base, throwing guys out. So I got start with one ball and I just throw it to him, have him transfer, throw it back. And then I give him two balls. Now that second ball, we throw the ball at the exact same time. And now you just got a ball consistently coming at you. My really, really, really good ones, I can get three going. And I'm still looking for the one kid that I'm going to be able to get four going with. And that right there is, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to handle it. I've never done four. Three, I haven't found much competition in some of these younger guys. I'm waiting to be challenged, you know what I mean? And that'll probably be the one that gets to fourth. So the juggling, and I really want to get back on the drums. I used to beat around on them when I was younger. Got some of the basics down. My dad played his whole life. He's still in a band today. And, it's just very soothing. I think it's a different thing that'll take me away from like a competitive mindset. Because my other biggest hobby is video games and just being myself. I'm always like really competing when I play, so I'd never really actually relax. So I think getting back, maybe like playing the drums or an instrument would be nice to do something without really hard competing, mind numbing kind of thing. You know what I mean? So yeah, we'll kind of see about that probably next off season.
Yeah, dude, that's such a great form of meditation. I know James was learning what was it during quarantine? The banjo.
Banjo. Oh, wow.
The ukulele. Yeah. The ukulele.
The ukulele.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, and it's just
harder, what I understand.
Yeah, I still pull it out once a month, but just for the same reason that you said, is it's so different than what I'm typically doing on a normal basis that it's just you throw a YouTube video out, you learn a new song, you forget it the next day, but it's just the process of being really bad at something that you're so bad, you can just kind of relax and just kind of play around and be a kid again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's so important for strength coaches too, to okay, we're at the gym, we're at the gym working out, and then we're training athletes, then we're hanging out with strength coaches, then we're hosting podcasts talking about strength development, and then we're reading the books about strength training, and then we're listening to podcasts. And there's got to be that other thing that isn't super sympathetic all the time, right? You're not just pounding and pounding and pounding. And I think playing music, Sometimes playing video games can be like that. I've actually got to the point where sometimes when I'm sitting down and eating, I'll just play videos of like streamers playing video games, just because it's the one thing that gets me away from thinking about training. And I really like that. And then I'll find myself like, oh, I'd rather listen to Andrew Huberman talk about, optimizing performance. And then I'm like, oh, I'm right back there thinking about the same thing. So I think that's so good for us to be able to have. Dude, let's talk about your story. You have such a cool story. Talk to us about, growing up in Indianapolis, everything that went on in high school, playing at Butler. That's a close place to my heart, being in Indianapolis, and then your journey through professional baseball and then to where you are now.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny when I read the outline, I really stopped and thought about it, which I think every now and then, like, it really is nice to do. And everybody, the one biggest piece of advice that I'm sure all three of us have had at some point, and everybody listening, is, stop, take a breath, because you're going to blink and it could be over. You're going to be somewhere new. And, oftentimes it's about high school or college or things like that. The last 9 years have literally like gone by like a snap, blink of an eye, and it's wild to think about because I've done so much. And it all, I guess, like the big one really starts like probably sophomore year at Lawrence North. That was when I kind of really started to become who I was going to be, and I started kind of separating myself from some of my friends that like I grew up with and was just always in school with. But I was playing varsity, so that's when me and Nolan first became really tight, and I kind of started hanging out with some of those guys. And the environment that I was now around for the first time in my life was other people that really, really, really wanted to win. They really wanted to go play college baseball, and it was all they cared about. Quite honestly, I never had that a group of friends that were as serious about it as I was until I met those guys. So then that really started to push me, especially with them being older than me, to really like start like working, and not just like, hey, I'm gonna go get some swings, or I'm gonna go throw a little bit. Like, it was literally like, nah, like, this is what you do every single day because of where you want to go. And anything else that you might have going on, like, for me, honest to God, it was homework quite a bit of the time. It really took a back seat. My parents did not like it very much, but it was what it was. And like literally it was like, no, I'm getting this done, and then anything else that comes after it, it is what it is. And that's where I started to get that stuff. And then I got to force barbell, and I can't even like really put into words like the difference that made for me. When I got to force, it was not only an eye-opening of how much I loved strength and conditioning and exercise science, and really learning what makes somebody tick and how you can get stronger, when you need to get stronger, programming, all those little things that Tyler instilled in us. But like being around you and all the NFL guys, and then obviously we had our little baseball group, and Nathan Barna, that I remember his powerlifting days, like, dude was throwing up insane weight, and it was like, oh my gosh, I'm around a bunch of like dudes right now, and I was like at the bottom, like as far as like athleticism, strength, I mean, I think just overall, like, body composition, any of that stuff, right? And that really pushed me, and I fell in love with it so deeply, where like I literally I couldn't wait to get back in that building. It was like, dude, I like sitting in class, like, we need to go train. I can't wait to get in there. And somehow it made 40 reps of kettlebell swings like seem not so bad. I mean, I think we both remember, like, I remember seeing that on my program the first time, and I was just like, this dude's crazy. Like, Tyler is crazy. And but he meant every single rep of it. He was going to sit there and watch and make sure he did every single rep. And that is the stuff that, as I signed and went to Butler, it really started to grow on me, and it became my default. It's what I fell back on. My freshman year went really, really, really poorly. I was coming off of an incredible senior season. There was thoughts that maybe I could get drafted, just wasn't quite ready. And the fall was a breeze for me. Truth be told, like I think I hit like 350 or something. I earned the starting job and everything was normal. I had never been on a team where I wasn't going to show up and be in the lineup. I was always the catcher. That's just how it was. And I nothing was different. And I started off the year really well in the spring. I was hitting like 300, hit a few homers. My first college homer was a game-winning homer. It was a pinch hit in the bottom of the eighth. I came in out of nowhere. First pitch I saw, hit a homer, and so life was good. And then we went to our first conference weekend. Now, college is different than high school because even though the scouting reports exist, people know you, people actually now have the stuff to get you out. Instead of high school, they didn't necessarily always have the stuff unless it was Ash Russell that we would face, Michael Mackey, some of those guys. So Seton Hall, in 12 at bats, I struck out 11 times. I walked once. I saw one fastball in those 12 at bats, and that one fastball I hit a homer foul, and then I got another breaking ball and I struck out. So I got slider after slider after slider after slider, and for the first time in my career, I was mentally defeated. Like, did not have an answer, did not know where to go, did not know what to do. And it was really, really challenging, really hard for a long time. Like probably I'd say almost a year-long struggle of like fixing what was going on in my head, maybe some adjustments that I had in my swing, stuff like that, and getting my confidence back. Came back my sophomore year, got it right back eventually, and I think I hit like 350, 400-ish throughout conference, so I kind of really did the exact opposite as I did the year prior. So then going into junior year, draft year, everything was looking great, got off to a great start. 14 games in, tore my meniscus. Just, as what we know, I mean, it was just overuse. It was eventually probably going to happen one way or another. It was probably already at least slightly torn, and I just went down and blocked a ball, and it popped. I got up, popped again, and I just played the rest of the game. And once the adrenaline and the caffeine and things like that got out of me, that's when the pain set in, and I ended up missing the whole year after that. Did not get drafted, and then came back for my senior year, and then boom, COVID. Same exact day as the day I got hurt, by the way, which is just, it was wild. It was weird because I woke up that day and I had a little reminder on my phone that it was like my 1-year anniversary that I had set, just as a kind of like a thing to be grateful for. And sure enough, it was the day that the season got canceled and the world shut down. So then from there went back for a 5th year. So it was 2 extra years in college that I wasn't planning for. And I ended up actually missing 11 games at the start of the year. I was academically ineligible. That's a whole nother weird, fun, crazy story. It was less than 1% of a grade. And then, I kind of just struggled a little bit, but then I went out to the draft league after that, played for Coco Crisp. Can't even imagine, like, to put it into words, like how much he helped me, the things I learned from him. And then after the draft, I ended up signing with the Utica Unicorns in the USPBL and Independent League. And now I'm finally, in a sense, living like the life I've always wanted to live, playing professional baseball, waking up, training every day, and giving lessons when I can. And it's, like, kind of all came to a real slow, like, pause almost. Like, it seems like I was going, like, didn't know where I would be, or things were just changing for a really long time. And this is like the first time that I've almost been just like on like autopilot, where it's like, all right, I know what I'm doing, and now I can just kind of go do it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that is a quick Cliff Notes version of the story of Duncan.
Oh, man, I appreciate you sharing your background. And we've worked with a lot of athletes. Obviously, that's what we do in the performance facility, and that injury cycle of what it does to you mentally, what it does to you, physically. Most of us either have an athletic background that get into strength and conditioning and have probably dealt with that. And, how were you able to get your identity back? And then during that injury cycle, were you able to kind of recreate a new identity that wasn't so dependent on your athletic performance that kind of helped you through that?
Yeah, I actually I took a step back before I could take that step forward. What happened was when I got cleared to go, I actually started lifting more than I typically would at that time of the year. Now, what I was always full blown 100% in the weight room, but February to September, those were always like maintenance phase. Like I'm playing, so I was never really getting after it. So I had all that time of the year that was never truly programmed, and it was never truly meant to get stronger. Well, I wasn't cleared to catch and play, but I was cleared to lift. So now I was in the weight room with my strength coach at Butler every single day, like getting after it. I mean, like absurdly, like getting after it, like chasing numbers that I hadn't even hit that before I got hurt. And it ended up leading to what our conversation was that me and CT had on Instagram. I got way too big, way too stiff, and I had to tone that back. And that actually is what led me to having to figure it out mentally, because I kind of realized everything that it took, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like I had to almost get knocked down again when I thought I was doing the right thing to really see what I actually needed to do.
And typically I'll ask a question about a time in your career where you had a paradigm shifting moment, about what you feel like strength and conditioning should be for an athlete. Is that kind of that moment where you started perceiving what goes on in the weight room not to be like an X plus B equals outcome from a athletic performance standpoint? Could you dive into that kind of concept a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. That is why I think like just with the first question of like kind of like my background, like I take it all the way back to force, like or what I did at LN, because I'm a firm believer that we all go through this process when we're younger athletes, that we go through that first hypertrophy phase, and man, is it fun. Like you don't even have to bulk, right? Like you don't have to care about what you eat. You don't care about anything. You are just, for the first time, you're lifting, you're doing reps, so your body naturally is just like, I'm gonna get bigger now, and everybody falls in love with it. And that's what initially got me so in love with the weight room. But I realized that like when we get to college or professional sports, we don't get told what to do after you get big enough, or almost too big in a sense, or what is your actual goal look like. So now you got to start kind of really being unique to who you are as a player, especially in baseball. Like, do you really need to be 6'4", 265 when you're 5'9", and your like best build might really be around 185, 190? And it's not to say you're not going to be strong. And that is where I started really looking at what we do in the weight room and what I was learning in college, what I was doing in college, like what my programs looked like. And it was all kind of like wishy-washy. You know what I mean? It was like straight out of the book sometimes. And that wasn't by no means. If any of my three beautiful strength coaches at Butler end up hearing this, I promise I'm not talking about you guys. They know who I'm talking about. And it was like we had one program here, and then like the women's lacrosse team had the exact same program. I was like, okay, like what's the point? You know what I mean? Like, what is my why? What is the reason for all this? And now when I look in the weight room and I see a baseball player that is big and he's strong, but his form is horrible. It's just he's belting up to squat 225, or he's ripping smelling salts. Smelling salts are all of a sudden some huge thing in baseball world. And they want to hit like a 225 bench, whatever it might be. I'm like, where did you learn this? You know what I mean? Like, who told you this is going to make you hit better? And it's like, it's honestly something that I don't even really think I have like the straight up answer for, outside of what we make still seem to be the right way or seem to be cool, or if people just straight up aren't getting the right direction. But it's really, really interesting and honestly really scary, because a lot of guys are getting put down the wrong path because of it.
And yeah, man, you bring up a couple good points there. And James, was it, I don't know if we were recording it, but you had mentioned, something along the lines of, when I get, throwing the ball around and I get in the weight room with these big leaguers, we start to realize how unimportant our job is sometimes as strength coaches. And I think, Duncan, all that stuff that you went through when you were in the weight room and you were getting big and strong, and, and it push this, take the salts, lift more weight. I think we try to justify the reasons we do things as strength coaches, and say, because we want to be the ones who said, I did that. Look what I got with my athlete, right? Which is a funny thing. Like, no, this was an athlete. This dude was an athlete way before you were. But no, my athletes, I'm doing this. Like, I got him to front squat 315, right? Because we need to show that that somebody's paying us, and this is why they're paying us, to be able to get this. But what ends up being the only thing that matters is production on the field, right? And like, how can we be better? Do you think from what you went through, how can we be better in communicating that point as strength coaches to athletes, to let them understand that, listen, like, yes, this is important to stay healthy for longevity purposes, for cardiovascular purposes. This is very important. But the most important part is to be better at the skill of your sport. How can we communicate that better? That
is a perfect question, because I think that if there was a blueprint for it, I think there'd be a lot more people knocking at the big league door. You know what I mean? Like,
that's a great point.
More challenging it'd be even harder to get there, because I think the way that we can go about it is not the relationships. Yes, like, I think that stuff's important, like having them trust you, but I feel like that's kind of just surface level. Like, it's really understanding, who you're talking to and what is going to make them understand it and click with it. Because I think a lot of times some of the knowledge that we might spread is almost wasted when you're talking to an athlete that at the end of the day, they could care less if their career ended tomorrow. And that is a very challenging thing, I think, to find, where, you want to tell them, like, hey, like, dude, like, this is the way, almost, you know what I mean? Like, this will really and truly, like, put you next level, like, really help you take that next step. And they're like, I don't really care if I take that next step. You know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. And they might sit there and say, like, oh yeah, for sure. And then, they post on Instagram or something about it. But it's the ones that, like, really love it, and they really, really, really want to make it to that next level. Like, it's almost like finding them, and just kind of being like, hey, I'm gonna tell you to do this, and you're gonna lead the way, and people are gonna want to see you do it, and they're gonna be like, oh, it was right all along. You know what I mean? I don't think it's something that you can herd everybody to do. It's almost got to be like, someone goes and does it, you're secretly behind the scenes, like, pulling it and making it all happen, and then everybody sees it and they're like, yes. Because, I think sadly, that's how things go. Like, if LeBron came out tomorrow and said, this is how I train, this is exactly what I do, and it was a full-on program, there would be thousands of athletes, not just basketball players, like, hey, well, this is what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And I think
how much? Sorry, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, and I think that is a great, like, tie into the concept of, right, as a strength and conditioning coach, is it more important for us to get an athlete to fall in love with the program or fall in love with the process of leveling up as a human?
Yep.
And because, we talk about it, a program is just letters and numbers on a piece of paper. But falling in love with leveling up as a human, that involves a lot of different things outside of what we do in the weight room. And, our effect on the athletes that are in front of us, hopefully, if we're doing a good job listening and hearing those conversations and communicating, that we can actually help them make better choices because they want to make better choices outside of the performance facility. You've seen professional level athletes that you've worked with. You're a professional athlete, but you also do lessons with younger kids.
Yep.
What are some of the things and moments that you've seen that really just like spark kids' attention, like the youth kids, that start to understand that, like, oh, I can level up as a human, versus like, oh, I need to do 10 blocking drills today because coach told me to?
Yeah. Well, it's actually funny. I have a perfect example is last night. So I have a kid that I have a few times a week, and I always know how much he slept the night before based on literally his facial expression when he says hello. It's either like there is no soul inside your body, or you are a 10-year-old. You know what I mean? You are jumping around, you're giddy, you're ready to go. And yesterday he walked in the cage and I looked at him and I said, You're tired. When did you go to bed last night? He said, 5. I said, 5. When'd you go to bed? He said, new season of Apex came out. He was playing all night. We woke up at like 3 today because they didn't have school. They had like a built-in day or something. And I was like, dude, like, come on now. You know what I mean? So I had to kind of like give him well, I don't care how much you slept. You still gotta bring it today kind of thing. And he was really struggling with a specific drill off the machine that he does really, really well. And I kept asking him over and over again. I said, why are you struggling? Why are you struggling? Why are you struggling? He said mechanics or, this or that. The ball was bouncing too high up on him. I just kept asking him. And finally he goes, I'm tired. I said, yep, you're tired. So you did not sleep enough. You are not ready to go. You're not properly fueled. Your body is missing a lot of these things that it needs that makes you do these things with ease. And I just like his eyes like kind of like lit up. He was like, oh, it's like, so it does. He was like, that stuff really does matter. He's like, but how could it matter when, like I woke up hours ago and like I feel fine. I was like, well, you might feel fine, but like that doesn't mean like, your sense of what's going on around you is okay, or like, your ability to make decisions and like really do what we need to do as catchers, like that stuff's all off. So we had this little game we play like where I slap his hands and he's got to move his hand. And I just sat there and was just whacking him over and over again. And he was like, oh my gosh, like this is so weird. You know what I mean? So I told him the next time I see him, I want him to get full 8 hours, 8 to 10 hours a night before I see him. And we're going to do everything again. And we're going to see how that pans out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude, that'd be such a cool moment for him to hopefully recognize that. And it's tough at that age too, right? Like I always say, ready and willing, if the athlete's ready and willing to understand and to take in the information I'm giving him, then we'll be able to make progress from that. But if they're not ready and willing, right? Like we talk about just some of the college athletes who come in and say, hey, I'm just here so I don't get in trouble from the coach. So I don't have to do my burpee punishment. It's like, that's the only reason I'm here. Right. And I understand that. Okay. So just coming here again for health reasons, but really the ones who want to be great, hopefully are going to, continue to kind of give us their effort, whether they're low of sleep or have maximized sleep, but hopefully they can kind of figure it out, and understand how good you feel when you've actually slept and when you've eaten right and when you've had enough carbs and you have kind of dialed up everything else going on in your life. I want to go back to the comment that you made like earlier. So what if LeBron James comes out with a program, right? Like this is the Bron program. This is what you're going to do. Like you got to buy the program, then you got to buy the shoes, right? But then after that, like you're going to be LeBron. The first thing that I thought about when you said that is, okay, let's say 1,000 people buy the LeBron James training program. How many more LeBron Jameses do we then have from that program? Probably zero, right? I would argue zero.
It would be an anomaly if one came out of it.
Right,
He would have already
right.
been LeBron James 2.0. He would have already been it. It would just happen to do it.
Right. And then it would be, you know, the individual behind the whole thing selling the program, making all the money from it, is the only one who's actually benefiting from the program. So again, it kind of goes back to like what really matters. And it's cool to hear that you're doing those things in the cages. Like, I'm not just saying, you know, Mitt's got to be here. This is how I field this ball. Like, you're doing things like having those deeper conversations of, hey, this is happening because you are underslept. Hey, this is happening because you didn't get as many wins last night in Apex season 3 as you wanted, and all of those things, right? What are some of the things that you've seen? And again, this can be the athletes you've worked with or yourself that have kind of driven you to come back. Like you mentioned at Force, it driven you to come back into the gym or into the skill work because it was more fun and it was thing that you enjoyed, as opposed to, you know, just monotonous 4x10s over and over again in the weight room. Are there things that you've really attached to because you've enjoyed doing it, as opposed to just knowing that you've had to do it? And if you have, what are some of those things?
Yeah, at least for me personally, it's kind of been the holy cow moment, like 5 months after, like, you kind of set out to, like, with whatever your goal is, right? Like, we always had our goals at Force, and it was, you know, Tyler always had us overshoot him a little bit, right? Like, I remember I wrote 400-foot bombs on a program one time. He made me write 500-foot bombs. To my knowledge, I have not hit a ball 500 feet yet, but like, I love that he did that, because it's like I'm still chasing it. And
Bro, I remember that on the I can picture it at the top of that program. That's so funny.
And we had the shirts that said triple digits, DIJETS, because Nolan didn't know how to spell digits. Oh my gosh, it's so
yeah, remember it well. Amazing.
Yeah, and it's literally it's those things, like, it's those goals, it's those, like, oh my gosh, like, this is starting to pay off moments that just suck me right back in every single time. And you know, like, it's finding that I still have that shirt that says triple digits, and I remember wearing it into the gym one day, and it wasn't even like a lower body day, but I just felt like I had to squat. Like, I had that shirt on, and I was like, I feel like I got to squat today. Like, it just for the culture of Force Barbell, I'm squatting today. And it's those itty bitty things, because I think about when I first walked in that building, I could barely squat to parallel, let alone actually get good depth and get a good rep in that would actually help me. Like, I first started squatting a PVC pipe until I even got under a bar. Like, Tyler wouldn't let me until I could do it right. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, it's just so crazy to see where you've come, and then, you know, all these little goals that kind of become in the off season. Like, this year it was, you know, I just simply wanted to learn how to program a professional off season for myself better, and I'm learning a whole lot about it. And it's just those little things that I think it's just, you know, I proves that I love it, I think, in my opinion, because, like, it's never felt like work to me. It's just like, you know, something I get to do. So, you know what I mean?
I mean, like, so you're programming for yourself, and I think that's like probably the hardest thing I've ever like tried to do, and I always fail miserably at it. What are some things that you've in this off season enjoyed, or what are some things that you put down on paper that you were like, nope, I'm not doing this?
Well, it's funny. I really enjoyed my, like, triphasic set that I did. So I love doing triphasic. I've done it the last 3 off seasons, and I think it'll be a staple every single off season for me. But what I learned is that I did it way too early, like scary early in my off season, because I'm still almost 2-3 weeks away from leaving, and I did this like over a month ago at this point. So I was almost like close to like peaking and getting like really ready to go. And I still had so much time until I even had to leave. And now I was just used to having to be ready by February. So I loved that part because it's my favorite program, but I did it very wrong. The one thing that I put down on paper, and I think I've put it on almost every single program, and I go like 2 to 3 weeks at a time, and then I try and switch some stuff up, is that these like planks that we used to do at force, where you like force yourself into like perfect posture, and it's like you don't really feel it until you find it, and then you find it and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm the weakest human being alive. I keep putting those on my program as if I'm actually going to do them like every single day, and I don't like I don't know what it is, but like I see it and I'm like, yeah, but like I did that one thing and it was quarter day, so I guess that'll work. Like I keep running from them.
Bro, that's so funny. Ready and willing, right? Like, so James and I are the lunge guys now, right? James is 140,
41
100, 141 days straight of 15 minutes of walking lunges. Ends up being, about 800 meters. And the first time I really started lunging was, it would have been 8 years ago now when we were training together. And I always told myself I needed to do it. I should go heavier. And I wouldn't. And I would never even, I wouldn't pick up 50s. I would get screamed at for not picking up 40s. Now I'm almost 35 years old and I'm doing lunge workouts with 100-pound dumbbells for reps, right? Like front squat grip, reverse lunging for 315. And I just wasn't ready to understand the importance of that exercise. And it's not without the coaches trying to get me to do it. It's not without the athletes around me lifting heavier and me wanting to chase them, because all that was happening. But I think honestly, it was a time where like I always trained in sweatpants and I didn't have very strong legs and I didn't have a quad at all. So I'm like, I'm not going to do it. And, maybe it just took a little bit of lunges, a little bit of a push from to get me to lunge more often. Started doing some distance lunges, started to get a little quad teardrop. And all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, I need to do these heavy lunges every day. But so like, you're not the only one who goes through that. We're not the only ones who go through that. If you're listening, we understand it. Just, chop away at it here and there. Do it when you can, right? But also if it's super important, you should do it more often. Dive in a little more, because you talked about how excited you were about the triphasic training. We had Greg Herseg, a volleyball coach, on a couple months ago, and he talked about it. And then James asked a great question. He said, what's your favorite and what's your least favorite, part of the training? And so I want to hear those, your favorite and your least favorite. And then I also want to hear how you use that for yourself.
Okay. Well, easy. My favorite is the eccentric and my least favorite is the iso. I don't know how many people will disagree with me there. The isos suck. They're not fun. They're boring. 7 seconds seems to be 30 seconds. Like I put my phone in front of me as like the timer, and I swear like it gets to 5 and it just doesn't go anywhere. It's just like just stops. It stops and you're like, oh my gosh, like it turned off. It's got to be 7 seconds, right? But so yeah, and the way I've used it for myself is I actually 3 years ago I had a strength coach, Will Birch at Butler, and he was the one who first introduced me to triphasic, just straight 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. And quite honestly, like I looked at the program and I had never heard of it, never seen it. And I was like, it doesn't look like we're doing a whole lot. Like it kind of just looks like, we're going to focus on this and there's not a whole lot of accessories to it. Like, what's the main purpose? And he was like, bro, just trust me. Like, you're going to feel quicker. You're going to feel faster and you're really going to feel more stable. I was like, okay, whatever, sure. And sure enough, like we went through the program and we started maxing and testing. And on a day that I had class for 5 hours, 3-hour practice, and couldn't tell you how really well fueled I was, I hit 605 on a deadlift for 3, and I couldn't believe that I did it. I mean, I literally, like, my earliest testing on that had probably been around 500 to 520. So this was like a gigantic jump, and it moved really well. So immediately I was like, all right, this program, this is it. And now I've integrated it where I'm not necessarily chasing those insane numbers, but I'm chasing always how I felt after that program. So I go 3 weeks now that I have a longer schedule, a longer off season. So the first week is a higher tempo with very lightweight, like honestly almost like 50%, where I'm really holding whatever position I need to hold like perfectly to a T. Then that second week, I do that exact same tempo, but I'll take it up to about 60 to 70% based on how it feels. Um, and then third week, I'm going heavier, but not too heavy. But I'm really trying to push myself to see what I can get out of it. And I don't play with the tempo or the reps a whole lot. I keep it right around 5 to 7 seconds for both the eccentric and the ISO. I've, at least for me, I found playing with the weight has helped me more than the time, because I think it's the time under tension's there, but it's almost like the stress that I'm putting on me is bringing a different way about it out of it. I don't really, you know what I mean? And so by the time I'm done with it, I'm in that concentric phase, which I really just do a whole lot of like French contrast with. I'm feeling bouncy. I feel quick twitch. My body feels really, really good, which is the most important thing for me, especially with my hips. I'm really, really tight. So like if I can move that weight fast, be in really good positions, and not wake up the next day like needing a walker, everything is really, really good. And I feel like I get that best out of that triphasic.
You had mentioned the deadlift. Trap bar. Is that a trap bar deadlift?
Yeah.
So insane. What are some other exercises that you like to push during those sessions? What are some of your favorites?
For like accessories or just like in general?
Just like the main lifts.
Yeah. So for the squat, I go everything's on the safety bar, and I've actually found it really, really fun to do like a Hatfield squat, so arm or hands assisted, and just loaded up. But for the eccentric, putting the pins down at right about where my depth would be. So I'm going all the way down to the depth, and then just letting the weight go. That I found that allows me to go heavier and really put more focus on the eccentric. I feel like sometimes when we do the eccentric down and then the squat up, you lose a little bit because you can't go as heavy, or you're just kind of a little more pressured once you get down and you kind of start getting down to your depth and you got to go up. And for the so that's kind of the same for the eccentric and the isos. For the deadlift, I kind of go away from just a straight deadlift, and I do like a deadlift to an RDL. So the RDL will be the eccentric, and then rep it up, drop it, and then reset, go again. For the bench, I love pin press for the concentric work, and then honestly just having the pins down there ready, the same as the squat for the eccentric down. And then the ISO, I switched to a I can never remember the name of this bar. It has the neutral grips for it. And you know what I mean? It's a little lighter.
Yeah, I'm thinking of it too.
Yeah, no, and it's on the tip of my tongue.
Got a couple of the different.
Different
grips,
so
right?
a little wider and a little closer. And I use that one for the ISOs, because just over time I've felt that that's a little bit better of a position for me. And everything is partnered up with some explosive. So, whether it be, a plyo, med ball throw. And it's honestly, at this point in my career, it's kind of like whatever I'm feeling that day. So I remember, like I used to think like, all right, I'm squatting, I have to go do a vertical jump. I'm deadlifting, I have to do a broad jump. But I've started kind of getting really playful with it, because it just kind of gets, a little over and over again, like a little worn down. So I've started doing a lot more like med ball jumps, or like just see how far I can throw a med ball, and things like that to spice it up a little bit. And then as far as accessories, things like that, it's a little more just basic, like 3x8 basic stuff, just to make sure that you're still moving and things like that.
Now, as you kind of, go through these programs, do you have any like performance metrics that you're keeping track of, or are you looking at any of the statistical outcomes from a baseball performance side that you pay attention to during your off seasons?
I pay a lot of attention to the most important, in my opinion, is how my body feels. But there's a lot of things that go along with it. So, big one for me is my weight. So when I got too big, I got around 225 to 230. So I have that little, kind of like that roadblock almost, like, hey, like this is where you're gonna really need to start checking in on yourself. So I stay around 212 to 216. And so that's something that I really pay attention to. And as my weight goes up, if I still feel the same that I did when it was 212, I'll allow myself to maybe go a little more. Because if I can get bigger and feel that way, absolutely, I'm gonna let myself. Now, from the baseball side, I don't really pay attention to like what my maxes might be, but I am watching how the ball comes off my bat, how I throw, and I haven't necessarily gotten into that point where I'm reading it just yet. That'll actually come here in the next couple weeks. Like we use Rapsodo TrackMan to see exit velos, or the pitchers already use it all the time, like for their mound velos when they throw bullpens and things like that. I think that stuff is it's a right away. It's an indication of like where your body's in, because I don't think I'm going to train and just all of a sudden start hitting 130 mile an hour, laser beams at the plate. But I do know that at one point in my career, I averaged around 95, like to 98. So this year, if I'm averaging 98 to 100, something's gone in the right direction.
And kind of I want to tie that into, being a catcher. You actually can have a different perspective on like pitchers off seasons and how they work. We see this so much just plastered all over social media, whether it's, this account or this account or this facility of like, we're still kind of early in the, later into the off season, but like guys are just going max effort velos year round from a pitching standpoint. Like, do you ever get to like be teammates with guys that are like posting these videos of them throwing 98 pull downs, and then they get into season with you and they're like 90 to 91 off the mound? And like, is that common, or is that just,
it's too common? Yeah.
And why do you think that happens? And like where are some of the mistakes along their path to prevent them from like sitting at 93 versus like this huge peak and flow with lacking consistency?
I mean, if you think that we've like done a deep dive at all up until this point, I think like this is probably it right here, right? Like this is the conversation that CT and I like started and wanted to get into. It is unbelievably common to see it nowadays. And like, dude, the other day I saw 2024, so it's a sophomore in high school, he has his shirt off, he gets slapped on his back like he's about to hit a 500-pound squat, sprints 10 steps and throws the ball as hard as he can. It's like 70 something. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, is this really like what our culture's becoming? Like, is this what we're doing? You know what I mean? Like, this is what we're worried about right now. And it's almost like embarrassing, to be quite honest with you. Now, properly programmed at the right time, done the right way, if it works for you, I have zero problem with it. Like, to each his own, man. Go do you. Like I said at the very beginning of the podcast, like, if it works for you, it works for you. But the issue I have is posting it on Instagram and saying, here's your formula. This is it. This is what's going to get you to wherever it is that you want to go. Because there are way too naive the kids out there, man. Like, they're going to see that and literally think Yep. Cool. I got no one to teach me, no one to show me how to really do it, but saw it. Cool. We're going to go do it. And now you have a bunch of kids that are getting hurt. You got kids that are just way outside of their knowledge, doing things the wrong way. And on top of that, the community, I don't think there's ever been a bigger divide in the baseball community, because everybody has the answer. Everybody has a secret formula. And it's not just for the pull downs. There is a fun trend on Twitter. I don't know how much you guys have seen it, or if any of your guys have brought it up, is guys that literally are saying they reinvented the way people hit. So instead of swinging, you swing backwards, you snap, you don't externally rotate, you don't use the ground, all these things that are literally basic science. Don't even get me started. But you got people that literally argue about it day in and day out. And I can't imagine being a younger athlete seeing these things and basically having to pick a side. And whichever side you choose, it's like, good luck to you, kid. You know what I mean? Like, you chose this path, now do with it what you will. Like, hope you make it. And it's so wrong. It makes no sense.
Because it's so much easier to argue programming over Twitter than it is to actually go in a gym and see if the energy is the same way that it was like when you walked into force so many years ago. And I know we keep bringing these up and again, context for the listeners, it's just a place where like people fell in love with the process, right? And again, it can be a gym, it could be an elementary school, it could be a basketball court, it could be, like a fenced in play area, whatever that place is for you. This was one of those places for us. And it's so easy to just argue about that stuff on Twitter and on Instagram and flex about what you know and what you can do. But it's very hard to feel and create the environment that is created in those places where, again, in our situation, it was a gym, but for everybody it's different, where athletes can go in and feel comfortable and feel like family and fail in front of people and come back and be confident and trust other people. And that, I think, is why everything keeps going that way. And, unfortunately, it's not just in baseball, it's in football, it's in other sports. I'm sure it's in combat sports where people just want to say like, hey, I know this is the way to do it. But nobody wants to talk about like how, like you mentioned, like how about all the athletes getting hurt from trying all these things and never selecting one thing to stick to? Because we know if you spend some time sticking to something and do it consistently and you do it with intent, you will have progress, period. We understand that in anything you want in life. But that doesn't make as much money or give you as many followers or give you as many likes as it does if you say, hey, this is the way to go.
Yeah.
This is what you have to do. Right. So what are you doing to try to help that? Because I know there are things that, that we try to do on a daily basis, and you obviously already having these conversations is helping that process. Right. So what are you able to do on your platform and with the athletes you work with that you're able to kind of help them steer through what's right and what's wrong out there?
Yeah. Well, honestly, like I am as like straightforward as I possibly can be with anybody, and I never turn it down. I turn it up when it's an older athlete, so a high school kid. Like if I get a question, I do not hold back. I like, like there's some guys that'll come up to me in here, whether it's about catching or hitting, and they say, hey, I've been told to do this, and I know for a fact that it will cause more problems than good. I'd straight up tell them, I don't care who told you that. That's wrong. Like, and most of the time, 9 times out of 10, it is a cookie cutter, straightforward, you are doing it this way and this way only way of going about things. And the thing I always tell them is How about you do one before you do two? Go find out who you are. Go find out what your swing might actually be, what causes the problems that you might have, and then come back and talk to me, or go and see if you want to work on something such as this. And with the platform that I have, as far as, Instagram, Twitter, and things like that, I think, I make a lot of people mad sometimes. I really and truly do. But it's because same exact thing. I don't hold back. If I see something on Twitter that, is not good for an athlete, like, I say it. And it makes a lot of people really upset. But the ones that get upset, they feel personally attacked. And they feel personally attacked because they've probably been doing that. And there's a big difference between sharing advice, sharing knowledge, throwing out tips, and saying, you're going to go do this way right now. There you go. Boom. And that's what people do. And that's where the disconnect is. It's like, I coach, I help, I share knowledge, I give advice, but you'll never hear me tell a kid, like, if you don't do this, I'm not going to talk to you again. Every one of my guys knows that, like, you can tell me this feels off, I don't like this, and we'll find a new way. But you got another guy that's like, go do this. Like, here you go. Like, I'm going to tell you to take your bat and you're going to swing backwards. All right. And then you're going to ballerina spin around and do a cartwheel. And you're like, bro, why would I do that? I don't want to do that. Well, because I told you to. All right. Because I told you to. And it drives me crazy. And like, that's my biggest thing. If a coach tells you to do something, weight room, on the field, training, whatever, and you tell them, okay, can you tell me why? If they cannot tell you why, you're with the wrong person. Straight up. You're with the wrong person.
So I just had a conversation about a week ago with a college pitcher that I work with. I've known him since he was in high school. He's a flamethrower. But he changes what he does on a regular basis based on how he feels. He's a very cerebral kid. And he's like the kid you're afraid of as a strength coach in the weight room. Because one, he's one of the stronger guys in the weight room. And two, he's always going to ask that question. Yeah. So he was talking to me about how he was in the weight room and he does the team lift, whatever that main strength movement is. And then he does his accessory work. And so then the coach is like, hey man, I need you to do our accessory work. Yeah. And he's like, okay, like I want to understand why we're doing these specific movements. I really feel good about doing these. And the coach is like, you're going to do them because I'm the strength coach and I'm telling the team to do them. And he's like, well, okay, so how's this going to help me? And he just goes back and forth with that conversation. And he's like, he is like feeling personally attacked by that strength coach saying like, no, you need to do this because it's on the board. And he's not getting that reasoning. And we see a lot of that with strength coaches from other sports in that. And that's why, me personally, if I'm working with baseball players, I'm starting to play catch again. If I'm working with football players, I'm starting to sprint again. How are you able to relate, your personal experiences to the clients that you have, especially starting at a young age, to say hey man, these are the mistakes I've made. Hey, these are the things that have really helped me, but these things that have helped me might not help you. And these things that aren't always the best thing for me might help you. What kind of autonomy do you allow your kids to have kind of with the work you do with them to find their own way and to be critical thinkers? Because my goal is to not be the last strength coach of the kids I work with. I want to be the first strength coach. Right. And how do you teach your athletes to critically think about what they're doing in that sense? Ask why. What are some of those conversations that you have with your kids?
Well, I think an advantage that I have is a lot of people, when they say, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have gone about this differently. It's typically they are I wish I would have worked harder. I wish I would have cared a little more, or I wish I would have, done this with my swing, whatever it might be. My advantage is I've never not worked hard enough. I've almost done too much. So I really understand what it's like to be in a cage or to be in the box and not be able to turn your brain off. And you're like, I got to go until I'm perfect. And I've been there, and it has really, really hurt me as a player because you chase perfection in this game of baseball. Like, you're just going to keep running around looking like a dummy because, like, it's never going to be there. So when I'm talking to my younger guys and they immediately throw out like a why, or like, well, I can't do this because, and like that just doesn't work. I honestly just kind of look at them and I let them talk again. Because, like, it is with little kids or like some younger guys, like, if you just don't give them an answer straight up, they'll just keep talking. And when they get to that second gear where they're not going to stop talking, they honestly almost answer their question right then and there. Because, like they kind of just start rambling. They're like, oh, well, maybe I could do this because, like, I guess I could see what you're saying and maybe it might work at some time tomorrow. Who knows? I don't know. And then I'm just like, hey, wait, what did you just say? Like, what do you mean? Like, no. What did you just say? Oh, maybe I could do it. Yes, there you go. Right there. Boom, try it. Let's go. Like, there you go. Right. Like, I didn't even have to tell you. And I think by doing that, putting that power in them that like they actually answered their own question, and then always telling them like, your answer, right? Like, you take 5 bad swings in a row. I'm not immediately going to tell you this is what you're doing wrong. Like, your answer, find it. And sometimes what they tell me is, no, it's not the right answer. But like, if they had a better swing, I'm going to tell them absolutely, like, great swing, dude. Like, you got it yourself, because they're going to go home and they're going to play video games. Like, they're not going to remember that in-depth dialogue, like, not yet, at least, you know what I mean? So like that confidence that starts building in their head, and that like, oh, I can do this on my own almost. Like, I can really problem solve and I can like feel things out. I think that goes a really, really long way. And teaching them that is more or less just like letting them do it, not beating it out.
Yeah, bro, that's such a good point. We see it a lot just at an easier level, like exercise selection.
Yeah.
You give kids a autonomy of, hey, you got a squat variation, and then they'll get after it a little more, right? Or then even when it comes to asking questions, they'll say, hey, what's a single leg dumbbell RDL? Yeah. And you'll say, well, you know the answer to that. Why don't you tell me what you think it is? Yeah. Oh, well, I think I stand on one leg and hold a dumbbell and then do an RDL with it. And you're like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And my thing is always like, you should take my job. Yeah. Like, do you want the shirt? You know what I mean? Here, you got it. You can go on the payroll. Yeah. And I think that just does such an awesome job of just like empowering them as athletes, right? Instead of saying me as the coach with my arms crossed, right? I say like, oh, you stand on one leg and you grab a heavy, right? You like let them work through it. Mm-hmm. And then again, maybe they forget that conversation, have to ask you again, or maybe the next time it comes up, they think, oh yeah, I talked to this about coach, or they're at home and mom asked them to do something and they want to go up and ask questions. They say, you know what? I just overcame this at the gym. Let me see if I can do this at home. Absolutely. I don't want my little brother to go grab this thing for me. Right. Like, I'm going to figure out how to do it. And I think all that stuff is just great points. And I'm so glad you brought those up. Duncan, I want to start wrapping it up with a couple questions, man, not like a ton of continuity, but just some easier questions that I'd love to hear your answers to. If you're cool with that, man, then we'll get you out of here. So first one, bro, you got some custom shoes, and this is just scrolling back through social media a little bit, and maybe the last comment about the old force days, but you got some custom lifting shoes that said "Live light, lift heavy" on them. Mm-hmm. Tell us what that means to you.
That is like my mantra almost. Like, I don't necessarily have one, and if I did, it's probably either "He be worthy" from Thor or "Great power comes great responsibility." And going back to the first start of the podcast, if "Live light, lift heavy" is up there with those two phrases for me, like, it means something. And like, I think it really is like as simple as it sounds, right? Like, live light, lift heavy. Like, don't let the burdens of everyday life, like, really hold you down. Because I think we've all been through some things enough to where we can remember there was light at the end of the tunnel time and time and time again. So, I think it's a great reminder, like when you're going through some stuff, like you're not gonna feel this way every day. You know what I mean? Like you could wake up tomorrow, things could change, you'll have a great day. That's the live light aspect of it, and serve others, which is a one of the biggest things Tyler taught us, right? Is like serve others. I mean, I have my tattoo right here, bigger than me. That's where a lot of that comes from. And then the lift heavy aspect is dude, lift heavy. You know what I mean? Like throw some weight on the bar, challenge yourself, and pick it up. You know what I mean? Because that's where you embrace challenge. Like it is a inanimate object. I love to tell this to some of my guys in the weight room that, like, they're not like unleashing that beast inside them that'll help them lift some weight. Like you have an inanimate object in front of you. You are living, like you control that thing. Like you're not going to let that thing control you, invoke fear in you. You invoke fear in it. Like go get it. You know what I mean? I'm always yelling that, like just go get it. And that's where, like, just lift heavy. That's how I always felt in there. It was like, no. Who cares? Go do it. Go lift it. You know what I mean?
Force adaptation, baby. Lift something heavy, pick something heavy up off the ground, optimize those hormones. Favorite sports movie?
Ooh,
Favorite sports movie? We talked a lot about movie. What's your favorite sports movie?
Yeah. I'll tell you what, honestly, I the first one that comes to my mind is Never Back Down. Greatest MMA movie, I think, honest to God, that I've ever seen in my life. Like
I was just talking about that movie like last week.
So good. Like that movie had me wanting to literally do MMA when I was younger. Like I don't know what it is about it. Like, yeah, sure, there's a ton of sports movies out there that are so much like, I guess, better plots or like this or that, right? Like, but that movie is just like inspiring as hell to me. And I could probably quote that movie through and through. And every time I watch it, I'm gonna want to do MMA right after it.
Bro, have you seen that, James? Never Back Down?
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. What's funny about it is like nothing stood out to me after watching it, thinking like this was an awesome movie.
Yeah.
I just know I really enjoyed it.
Great soundtrack.
But I don't think like,
oh yes.
Oh yeah. But it's like the acting's not incredible, right? Like the directing's not, but there's something about it that just makes it like super enjoyable to watch.
It's a classic underdog story.
Classic underdog story. How about baseball? You have a favorite baseball movie?
Bull Durham for sure.
Bull Durham. Same answer as Jordan Krause from episode 30. How about that?
Unbeatable.
See, I've always liked Major League better, but maybe that's because I'm Cleveland through and through. And
yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, back to the minors. I remember I probably watched 12 times one spring break when I was younger. Maybe I'll watch the other ones.
Yeah.
All right, Indianapolis guy. You're an Indianapolis guy. I'm an Indianapolis guy. Went to school like 20 minutes from where I grew up. What is your favorite Indianapolis bar for people who?
Wow, that is. I'll tell you what. I think Brothers is a staple. I think that's a staple, but it's either 13-bit or is it 16-bit? I think it's 16-bit downtown now. It is a arcade bar. It's just off of Mass Ave. I can't remember exactly what road it's on, but dude, that is a ton of fun. It's like a bunch of arcade games. Everything's free. The drinks are like, I can't remember I can't think of the word it is, but like they had, themed. They're themed. The drinks are themed. Right. So I know they have one that's called the Hulk. So obviously I love it. But that is like a really cool place to go and have a good time. And it's not gonna make your pocket go empty.
All right. Last question, man. We like to wrap up all of our guests with this, and we've answered this probably 3, 4, 5, 6 different times. And I think those are the best conversations that we have, is when like this question consistently keeps getting answered. But, if there's anything that you think that we haven't touched on, or something that you want to touch on again to answer this question, feel free to do so. But I'm so interested to ask high performers, especially high performers in the industry, what they think we as strength and conditioning coaches and we in sports as sports performance coaches are missing in the industry. Like the big chunk, if we're standing up and speaking to 1,000 coaches, like what's the one thing that you think we're missing in the performance industry?
The truth behind sports specific training or bodybuilding training or powerlifting training or your basic just model of a program, any one of them could be right, any one of them could be wrong. And it is individualized. Like I think you and I had talked a little bit one time about sports specific training, and like, you know, there are guys out there that'll literally say like a baseball player should not back squat or bench, but it's completely fine for like your women's tennis player to go bench and back squat because it's different demands and yada yada. Like, no, like that doesn't exist. Like it is way more individualized towards what we think the mantra or the stereotype needs to be versus individualized for the athlete. And it might require a little extra time, a little extra work. And I understand, especially for college strength coaches, high school strength coaches, you only got so much time in the day. You only get so much time with them. But spending that extra day where you might not be lifting and lifting heavy, and the guys, girls, they might be getting a little annoyed, but going over like mobility, how you move, trying to see everybody and how they move. And that goes a really, really long way, because if you can get some type of assessment done, some type of understanding about who you got, now maybe you know who your athlete is that can squat, that shouldn't squat just yet, and then you go from there. Versus, oh, you play baseball? No bench. No bench. You're not allowed to get big. You're not allowed. Just stop. Like, stop right there. Oh, you play soccer? Like, why would we ever like get any type of like strength thing done? Because all you do is run, but you still need to be strong. But I don't care. You're just gonna run, right? Like, it's those things. Like really deep, like diving deep into what an athlete might need, not just stereotyping it based on what sport you see.
Dude, great point. Where can we find you, man? Talked about your Twitter a little bit. We talked about your Instagram a little bit. Give us your tags, give us your handle. Let us know where our listeners can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. I am Hewitt_Duncan on Twitter. Duncan Hewitt straight through, I think. Actually, let me check on that, because my Instagram just got hacked recently. So my name was changed to the only real Duncan something. So I had to fix it.
Sounds like something I would do. Did I hack it?
I know, right?
Yeah.
So on Instagram, I'm Duncan Hewitt_. That was right. That was the one that I was able to get. Yeah. And you'll know it's me. I have like 3 accounts on Instagram now. One is from when I was really young. That one is private. The other one is the one I had to make to message the guy that hacked me that I was coming for him and I was going to find him. And then the one now is the one that I use, and you'll see it because you'll see Spiderman stuff, some other Marvel stuff, and a couple homers on there. So that's the one.
Yeah, dude, that's how you know it's real. Hey, bro, thanks so much for coming on, man. This was an awesome conversation. Had a ton of fun, bro. Thanks for telling us a little bit about you and your story, and taking these deep dives with us, man. Like I said, the best conversations that we tend to have on here are super organic. They're not crazy structured. But I think we got a lot of really good info out for people. So this has been episode 31 of Cutoffs and Coffee with Duncan Hewitt, man. Again, thank you so much for being on. Again, if you're listening to the podcast, we ask you at the end of every episode to do 3 things for us. 1, please continue to practice gratitude. 2, tell the people that you love them. And 3, we got one life. Let's live that life stimulated. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see y'all in the next one.